Hi there, and thanks for joining me back. In this lesson, we're going to learn about the Layers panel. This lesson is divided into several parts, because through this panel we will learn the rest of the things to know about After Effects, and also start creating the final animation that includes video editing, creating a loader animation, logo animation, and many other cool things. In this lesson, we will learn how to arrange this panel, what options exist, what layers are, how to work with them, and many other cool things. So let's go! The first thing we see here is the name of the composition we are in, and the layers that belong to this composition. This composition can also be seen in Project Panel, together with the rest of the other assets. Now I want to bring the color palette to this composition, so let's go to the Assets folder in the Project Panel and drag the color palette into the composition. We can close it now. You can see here this area, which we have already talked about. It shows where we are in the timeline of this composition. We can change the display of numbers here to frames, by holding the Control key and clicking on it. For those who see it as frames and want to change to time numbers, can stand here, hold Control and click on it. Now it will show you time numbers. Another thing we have here is the search bar. It is very handy if I want to look for a certain layer parameter without entering it in this way. So I can look for the scale parameter of this layer. I can write here scale, and it will show me the parameter I was looking for. I will delete it now. If I want to see the scale parameter of all the layers together, I will not select any layer, and I will write scale here again, and then the scales of all the layers will appear. Now I want to show you an example that is very useful in the context of a search bar. As you can see in one of the lessons in my logo animation course when we create a stretch text animation, instead of entering each layer separately and finding the path parameter, I can search for the parameter I need and then easily create keyframes for all the layers at the same time. Now let's talk about how to turn the layers on and off. So, as you probably already noticed, I turn off and on the layers by clicking on the eye icon here. We can turn on all the layers and turn them off from here. We can isolate layers. If I want to see only this layer, instead of clicking like this and leaving only this layer on, I can click here on this point, and then it will actually turn off the rest of the layers and show me only this one. I can display two layers as well. If we have many layers, we can just click here instead of going through one by one. The next thing is to lock the layer. If I click here, then the layer will just be locked and I won't be able to move or touch it. Let's lock all layers except the video. Now I can only move the video because the video is unlocked. I will press Ctrl Z. You can also lock the video now, and leave only the color palette open. So here you see, I can't move anything but the colors. Now let's talk about the labels. Here I can tag the layers with different colors. As you can see now in the example, when there are many layers of the same family, then it is very nice to label all these layers with one color. What's cool is that we can select all layers that are labeled with the same color by Select Label Group. So I'll put it back to how it was and move on. We can create colors personally. If we click on Edit Label Group, a window from the Preferences will open. And here, I can create a new color. You can call it any name you choose. I think there is no need to bother with it because we have enough colors. It's a button that doesn't do anything, It just shows us the numbering of our layers. So the first layer we will always see on top. If I place this layer below the text layer, then this layer will now be behind the text, because it is below the text layer. I will press Ctrl-Z a few times. Now I want to talk about the names of the layers. Here we have the source name. If I click here, you will see that the name has changed to layer name. What is the difference? Source name is the original name of the asset. If I change the name of this layer here with using the Enter key to color 1. Now the name of this layer is color 1. Cool. But what is important to understand is that the original name of the asset has not changed. This is good because sometimes it is very useful to leave the original names of the layers in order to know how to find them on your computer. Another nice thing we have here, I'll zoom in. You can see a small bar with which we can arrange the panel however we like. Just like here. And here too. It is similar to what we have here in Project Panel. In this panel, there are many more options that are not currently shown to us. If I right-click on the gray area here and we get to columns, here we can add more actions that can be done on our layers. For example, stretch time, which we will talk about shortly. If I want to cancel it, then I will go into columns and click on stretch time again. We can present the same options from here as well. Here in the toggle switch mode, we can reach additional options that we can use on the layers. You probably see this area this way, and that's because when I recorded the course, my After Effects version was 2022. If you're working on the latest After Effects version, 2023, you'll see this area this way. Very soon I will also update the software, and then we will all see the same thing. It is important to note that later in the course we will learn about all these options and go through them one by one. For now, let's just see what's available here at the layer panel. Let's skip this area for now, and talk about this area up here. So the first thing we see here is the Mini-Flowchart composition. We already talked about it earlier. The shortcut for it is the Tab key. We can also reach a Mini-Flowchart from the composition. It is the same tool. Now let's talk about the Shy tool and see what he does. You can see the same icon here as well. If you don't see it, click here on the toggle switch mode. For the sake of the example, I will move this layer here because I know that I am not going to animate this layer, but I don't want it to bother me here between all the layers that I am going to animate soon. So I'll mark this layer as the Shy layer. Then I'll activate this function by clicking the icon up here. What happened is that we hide this layer so that it wouldn't take up space in the layer panel. We have not removed this layer, we just hide it. If I want to see it back, then I will click here again. The layer does exist and I can even move it around. If you don't want to move it, you can lock this layer and then hide it again. This is the best way to work when we have guide layers such as color palettes or other references. As you can see, I can't grab this layer because it's locked, and it's very convenient for me. Now let's learn what a layer is and what actions we can do with it. While learning, we will create this part of the animation where you see the video in slow motion while having a cool zoom in and zoom out animation. But before that, let's turn off and hide these two layers because I want to work only with the video layer. As you can see now, it is very convenient for me because I only see the layer I will be working with at the moment. Alright. So let's start. Let's get a little closer to the timeline. You can zoom in here as well. So first let's learn how to move the layer in the timeline. As you can see, I can move my layer in the timeline here, which will start from the second floor. That is, until this second, we will not see anything, and when we reach the layer with the time indicator, then we will see the video. We can move the layer to the specific time code by choosing the time code with the time indicator and then pressing the left bracket key. If I want the layer to come here, then I'll press the left bracket key again. If I want the end of the layer to be here, I will click the right bracket key. Get used to it. It's a very useful shortcut. Now I will get to the beginning of the composition, and instead of dragging the layer like this with Shift, I can just stand here with the time indicator, select the layer, and press the left bracket key. Now let's learn how to cut the layer. If we stand on the edge of the layer, you can see the mouse cursor showing us in arrows, meaning I can grab the layer by the corner and move it. Now we cut that whole part. If I move while holding the Shift key, the cut will stick to the time indicator. Let's cut the layer from its end as well. Now when I watch the video, I will see only this part of it. When I cut the layer, I can still see the original length of the layer here. I can adjust the layer to see the video's end, or beginning. Instead of shift dragging it to have the layer be cropped to the time indicator's position, I can also use the shortcut Alt and the left bracket key. And the same for the other side, Alt and right bracket key. If I press only the brackets without Alt, the layer will be moved to the time indicator's position. Alt and brackets is to cut the layer to the time indicator's position. The left bracket key will bring the beginning of the layer to the time indicator. Let's practice this again. So clicking the right bracket key will bring the end of my layer to the time indicator. And the left bracket key will bring the beginning of the layer to the time indicator. Now let's return the layer to its original state and continue learning about another very useful cutting method. Using a keyboard shortcut, Ctrl-Shift-D. This shortcut will cut the layer according to the time indicator positions while duplicating it. Let's do it. Go to this time code with the time indicator and press Ctrl-Shift-D. As you can see, the layer is cut and automatically duplicated. A continuation layer of this layer is created. This is exactly what we will do when we create the slow motion scene. When a certain part of the layer will be in slow motion and the other without. Let's practice it again. Go to this time code and press Ctrl-Shift-D. Let's do it here too. Well done. But for now, let's delete these layers and bring the video layer to its original state. The next tool we will talk about is Enable Frame Blending. This tool is very useful when we work in slow motion. As we learned before, let's right-click here, get to columns and bring out the time stretch. This will allow us to play with the speed of the video. So here we see the number 100. 100 means that it is the normal speed of the video. If I click on the number, I can see the actual length of the video. And if I write 300 here, you will notice that the length of the layer becomes longer. Let's click OK and see what happened. Now the video moves much slower. If I change the number here to 10, so the video will be in fast motion. exactly the opposite of 300. As you can see, the slow motion looks a bit fragmented, and the video does not play smoothly. With the help of the Enable Frame Blending function, it can be improved. If I click on it, nothing happens. Why is that? Because it works just like the Shy tool. I have to click both here and here. Only then we will see the change. If I get closer, we can notice that there is already some difference. Let's run it from the beginning. As you can see, the video is rendering slowly because the frame blending makes it difficult for the software to operate. To improve the rendering times of the preview, we can lower the quality of the preview to half. That way our preview will render faster, and we will be able to see the result much faster. So the slow motion looks a little better. But we can make it even better if we click here again. Now the frame blending is better. Of course, this comes at the price of rendering times. As you can see now, my preview is loading very slowly. Let's go back to the beginning and see it in real time. Looking good. If I want to turn it off, I can turn off the setting up here. Or I can turn it off from the layer itself. Let's cancel it for now and move on to the next thing. Let's talk about the motion blur. As you can see in the example, motion blur creates a blur for the layer during the fast movements. Now let's see how we can control the visibility of the motion blur. For this, we need to go into the composition settings by Ctrl-K. Go to the setting called Advance, and then adjust the amount of blur in this place. The more we increase the effect of the blur, the more difficult it will be for the computer to render our scene. The use of motion blur is becoming less common in today's motion design world, but it is worth using it when we combine animation with video. We will do it very soon. The next thing we will talk about is the graph editor. If we click on it, it seems that there is nothing here. It's because we don't have keyframes in the project. We will talk in detail about this panel later when we learn to create keyframes. Now let's click on the icon again to return to our normal timeline, and apply everything we learned in the context of cutting layers and creating high-quality slow motion. Let's close the folder here. Return the layer to its normal speed and start creating the scene. So first of all, we need to find a point in the video from which we want to start the slow motion. Let's get to the second 2 and 8 frames. This seems to be a good point to start the slow motion, because at this moment in the video the leopard is about to look at the camera. Now press Ctrl-Shift-D to split the layer into 2. Now let's choose a point where the slow motion will end. Let's get a little closer. So I can move the time code by dragging the time indicator with the mouse, or I can use the keyboard shortcut we learned, Control and arrows right or left. So I'll press Control and the left arrow. This point seems fine to me. And now let's press Ctrl-Shift-D again, to split this layer as well. Our layer is divided into 3 layers, and now we can control each layer separately. I leave this layer at the normal speed. And I do want the second layer in slow motion. So I'll select the layer and set it to 400. Now I'll move this layer to the side by dragging and holding Shift. Let's see what we got. For the slow motion to look good, we will activate the frame blending from here. Let's see how it looks. Great, looks good. Now I want the end of the video to be in slow motion as well. So I'll get to the point where I want the slow motion to start. I'll divide the layer by Ctrl-Shift-D. And I will turn this layer into slow motion, but this time I will choose 500. And of course, I will activate the frame blend for this layer as well. Let's see what we got. Looks great. A good time to press Ctrl-S to save the project. Let's also clean the project from the garbage data created on the computer while working in After Effects through Edit, Purge, All Memory and Disk Cache. That way the project will work faster. Remember to do it every so often. We are moving on. If we double-click on our layer, then a window of the video will pop up. Similar to the window that pops up when we double-click on the asset through the project panel. A common mistake is that while we are working, we can click twice on the layer by mistake and then a panel pops up that we didn't want. When this happens, simply close the panel that opens and continue with the project. Let's click on the Shy button so we can see all our layers. Unlock the Colors layer, and see that the same panel will pop up if we click on it. This happens on layers we import from the Projects panel and not on layers we create in After Effects, such as the text and shape layers. We finished the first part about Layer Panel. See you in the second part.